Hello, friends. Welcome to the mill. My name is James, and today I am taking a look at the second faction from Invaders from Afar, the Japanese-inspired Togawa. Like Albion before it, Togawa also can walk directly to the factory. Togawa does not have a starting peninsula the way the core 5 factions do. And this, of course, has some advantages and some disadvantages. Togawa's faction ability is Maifuku. Similar to Albion, after moving the character, you may place an armed trap token on the territory. These trap tokens are face down to the rest of the players, but of course, the Togawa player knows what the trap is. And the traps either give -4 coins, -2 popularity, -3 power, or -2 combat cards. Taking a look at the mech abilities, we have Toka, which will allow the Togawa character and mechs to move across a river with the limitation of one character or one mech per turn. And this combines well with the solitary Ronin ability before combat, where you have exactly one unit gain 2 power. Shinobi interacts with the Maifuku faction ability. Move to any territory with the trap token, and you may then arm the trap. And this is quite similar to Albion's ability. Suiton, move to or from lakes, and then in combat on a lake, you may play one additional combat card. So this puts Togawa in the same class as Nordic and Polania in being able to move to and from a lake with a mech ability. So why is this important? Well, if any of these 3 factions, Togawa, Nordic, or Polania, end up in a game where that faction is the only faction with the ability to move onto a lake, this is a distinct advantage because this allows that player to then put mechs and characters on lakes completely uncontested by the other players. So when I'm playing a game at home, if I'm only playing with the core 5 Scythe factions, I do like to make sure that if Nordic is in the game, so is Polania, and vice versa. That way, one player doesn't have the advantage of being able to place characters and mechs on the lakes and just hold those spaces indefinitely. Having Togawa in the mix allows me to have that third option if I really want to make the lakes sort of contested territory throughout the game, or if I just want to make sure that one player doesn't have that advantage, but maybe I don't necessarily always want to play with Nordic and Polania. I now have Togawa to give me that extra option. Let's talk about now the starting position that Togawa has, even though it is not a peninsula. We are, of course, close to oil and food here. We'll need to move on to our village to get our workers going. And we'll need to move on to the mountain if we want to get our mech engine going. And we're pretty far away from wood. So does that mean that Togawa doesn't ever build buildings? No, I've actually had some success with Togawa and buildings in the past, but it just means that it's a little bit trickier. And of course, this map that I've ended up with really does not incentivize the placement of buildings. It wants me to work on mechs and that all-important recruit action. So this is a pretty strong player mat, in my opinion, because I think that generally recruit is something that I almost always want to do, even when I'm not incentivized to do it, and mechs as well. Again, not that there's anything wrong with buildings. I think they can be quite strong, but it just takes it takes a particular setup to use them. And so since I'm not incentivized by the board, or really by how close wood is to my starting location here, I'm probably not going to pursue it too much. Gonna start things off with a trade for oil, and that's because I always like to do a top row action and a bottom row action on the second turn if I'm able to do that. And I'm not going to put a trap this close to my home base. I don't really expect another mecha character to get over here. And of course, if I ever am sent back to my home base, it's just one hex away. I don't really need it. But it is nice that the digital edition gives me this very large reminder of my ability to place those traps. So the question I have here is, do I want to start working on my mechs first or my recruit first? I think I'm going to go for the recruit. This, of course, raises the question for Togawa is how many mechs to go for. Again, we'll take a look at these abilities. I tend to think that Ronin and Toka together are pretty strong because Toka, unlike the core 5 Scythe factions, Toka is not limited to particular rivers. Toka can be any river. Togawa can be a particularly invasive faction in that there's really no uh, starting peninsula on the board that is safe from the Togawa player. So I generally go for Toka and Ronin early on. Um, and of course, I will be getting Suitan in this case because, as I mentioned, I don't have Nordic and Polonia, so I don't have to worry about either Rusviet or Crimea being able to contest any lake placement that I might do. And in this case, I'm going to trade for food so I can get my recruit engine going. And again, in Scythe, it's always good to be able to do a top row action and a bottom row action at the same time. Got quite a lot of workers now. And I'll be able to get my recruit card engine started. Now you'll notice I'm out of power. So I'm going to grab that +2 power. That way in the future, when I do my produce action, I'll have enough power to actually accomplish it. And you can see I already get my first card from that recruit. And I'll be able to start working on my mechs now. F4 food is pretty strong, especially since I don't actually have any workers out in the field right now. So that is what I'm going to take. So do I think another faction might end up on this hex? I think it's a possibility. Rusvia tends to be pretty aggressive, and actually so does Crimea. So I think I might put the -2 combat cards out right here. And since I've got the 2 oil from my previous prediction actions, I can go ahead and grab an upgrade. I think we're going to keep upgrading. Well, let's see, we've already upgraded enlist a recruit as far as it will go, so time to start working on those mechs. Now, thanks to my encounter, I actually have the food for a couple of turns here. And thanks to my upgrade, I'm able to produce on all 3 hexes. Of course, I know I'm going to be making some mechs, so that is the next recruit that I'm going to go for. I wish I could choose the power again, but of course I can't. So I think I'm actually fairly happy with my combat cards as they are. So we're going to go for popularity. I suppose it would be helpful, now that I think of it, to show Riverwalk, and you'll notice all over the board, every single hex on every starting peninsula has a Togawa icon, except of course for the hexes that are not connected by rivers, but of course Togawa can move across lakes too. So very dangerous, very invasive faction. No hex on the board is safe from Togawa. Which also means that Togawa can be a dangerous player to make an enemy of, because that player can often decisively attack later on in the game. I'll be turning that Riverwalk off. Again, this is an excellent feature of the digital edition that I really appreciate, that ability to see where my factions, and where all of the factions really Riverwalks can end up. Really commend the developers for that feature. In this case, I'm grabbing both an oil and a metal, since I can't get an upgrade or a mech this turn. Getting both of those will allow me to get either of my choice on the next. Now we can get a couple of these workers off of the village and back into the field. And we can keep advancing our character. So this is a key space. When you are playing either in person or digitally, do not forget to put a trap here. I really like, I mean, they're all strong. I think popularity is probably the most damaging one, because it is that score multiplier. So I really like to place a trap on this tunnel hex specifically, because of course it's connected to the other tunnels, and it is the main avenue through which I will probably be attacked by another faction, if that's going to happen. And I'm going to keep working on my mech upgrades here. I really like the upgrade action. I think it's one of the most... It makes you feel good when you do it, moving that little cube from the top row to the bottom row. I think it's one of the most dopamine-inducing actions in just about any board game I've ever come across. But unfortunately, you do have to do it 6 times in order to get a star out of it. Whereas most of the others, you only need 4. So here's my first mech. Just in case Roosviet comes knocking, I'm going to grab... Oh, this is tricky, which one to grab. Unfortunately, Togawa does not get the speed until you get to the factory. So Togawa, like Albion, is always going to be a little bit slower than the factions that come in the core box. I think I'm going to grab Ronan. And I don't really have the option here because I don't have a worker on the same space with my character, but because of Ronan, you don't really want to double up your mechs, so I'm going to start with one of them here in the village. And there's my lovely 4 coins. So with this production, I want to make sure that I don't produce on my village because this is not going to be my last production of the game, and I don't want to get that star right now because then that will make, of course, production much more expensive for the rest of the game. Instead of paying just 1 power, 1 popularity for my production, I will then have to pay 1 coin in addition. I'm going to pick upgrade and combat cards at this point, since I probably will be doing another upgrade. And now I can grab my next mech. I think it's time to bring the lakes into play here. Let's see. I think I may end up doing at least one more production after this, so I don't think this is going to be my last one. But it will be my last recruit, my first star. And now that I have 2 oil, it is once again time to get moving. I don't normally trap this hex, not because it's a bad hex or anything, but it's just I like to save 1 for the factory and I like to save 1 for 1 more tunnel, so this one I tend to leave blank. I am going to go ahead and move this mech over onto the lake, because that will just be an uncontested hex for the rest of the game. And I think I will just spread out a little bit down here. There's my upgrade. I don't know, I might actually get upgrades done this game. So this is a really strong action now, right? Because I've upgraded it several times. I'm getting either 3 power or 2 combat cards, and in exchange for 1 metal, I'm getting a mech and 4 coins. So, you know, this is the kind of thing where if I were stalling the game out for whatever reason, I might just keep doing this for a while, even after I get all 4 of my mechs out. And again, we do want to make sure we don't double up on our mechs because of that roaming ability. And looking at the scores, so Crimea does have a couple of stars here, but I am much further ahead in coins than either Crimea or Rusvia. At this point, you generally have an idea of how Togawa works. So I'm going to end by hopping into the factory here and spreading out my little mech empire just a little bit more. So what is a good factory card choice for Togawa? Well, of course, the big bonus is going to be this move that each one of the factory cards has. Let's see. This power for 3 coins is pretty solid. I could grab the 2 resources that are not the same for an upgrade, just to make sure I actually do get to finish up my upgrade, or I could grab this. Oh, this combat card for an upgrade in power is not too bad. I would probably be pretty tempted to either go with this one combat card for an upgrade of power, or power for 3 coins. I think those are both really strong. Well, I think I'm going to grab this one here. But I hope that has been helpful to you. If you are at all interested in Togawa, I think they are a very unique faction, a great addition to the game. I think aesthetically they're really interesting, mechanically very interesting, much like all the other factions in Scythe. Fantastic combination of both game design and world building. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.